The jaguar's paws sink into warm Arizona sand as the last golden light of day paints his spotted coat. Somewhere in the scrub, a jackrabbit freezes, but the hunter's attention snaps to a foreign sound. The crunch of boots on gravel. A shadow moves between the mesquite trees. The dart hits his shoulder before he can turn. As paralysis crawls through his veins, the jaguar's final conscious sight is of his own kingdom, the distant Santa Rita Mountains, blurring into darkness. The wind carries one last scent, cheap cologne and gun oil. Then, nothing. Consciousness returns with the stench of bleach and rotting meat. The jaguar's body aches from the concrete floor beneath him. His first instinct, to leap, ends with a skull-jarring impact against iron bars. Across the narrow walkway, an ancient mountain lion watches through half-lidded eyes. One of the creature's forelegs hangs useless, the shoulder a mangled ruin of old scars. They always try that first jump. The old cat rumbles, voice like dry rocks tumbling. The jaguar's answering snarl dies in his throat when he sees his reflection in the water bowl. Matted fur, eyes wild with something he's never known before. Fear. Moonlight filters through the warehouse's broken skylight, casting silver stripes across the jaguar's prison. He's learned the rhythms now. The 6 a.m. hose down that leaves his paws perpetually damp. The teenage keeper who kicks the bars for sport. The distant screams of other animals in unseen cages. But tonight, something different. A desert breeze slips through the cracks, carrying the perfume of creosote blooms after rain. The jaguar presses his muzzle against the bars, nostrils flaring. From the shadows, the mountain lion's voice comes soft. Don't. That's how they break you faster, by letting you remember. The jaguar ignores him. For 3 breaths, he drinks in the wild air, until the scent fades, leaving only concrete and despair. The new keeper smells of whiskey and sweat. When he jabs the metal rod through the bars, the jaguar moves faster than pain, fangs sinking deep into denim-covered flesh. The man's scream is cut short by the 50,000 volts surging through the jaguar's body. As he convulses on the floor, drool pooling around his twitching jaws, the mountain lion's words cut through the agony. They'll keep doing this until you stop fighting. The jaguar's vision clears just in time to see Garrett Voss himself standing over him, shaking his head. Pity. The man murmurs to the bleeding keeper. That pelt would have brought 6 figures at auction. The jaguar doesn't understand the words, but he understands the smile. Voss visits at midnight, his snakeskin boots gleaming under fluorescent lights. Behind him trails a nervous man clutching a clipboard. This one's special, Voss says, tapping the glass. Last wild jaguar in Arizona. The jaguar watches the man's diamond-crusted fingers trace the air where his shoulder would be. See how the rosettes form almost perfect circles? That's $500,000 walking. The mountain lion's sudden hiss makes both men jump. Voss recovers with a laugh. Don't worry, Ghost. You're still my favorite. As they walk away, the jaguar notices something he'd missed before. The entire back wall is lined with glass-eyed trophies. Bears, wolves, even a lioness. Their frozen snarls seem to whisper, "We were kings too." The warehouse settles into its nighttime chorus. The whimpers of a young fox in the next aisle, the endless pacing of the lynx upstairs. The jaguar lies motionless, watching a spider build its web between his bars. I was 8 when they caught me, Ghost says suddenly. Had a territory spanning 200 square miles. The jaguar flicks an ear. Winter of '09. I took down a bull elk near Flagstaff. Woke up with this in my leg. He nudges his ruined shoulder. The jaguar exhales through his nose, the closest thing to conversation he's offered. Ghost's chuckle sounds like gravel. Yeah, thought you were the only one with stories. For the first time in weeks, the jaguar sleeps without dreaming of steel. Monsoon rain drums on the roof as Ghost recounts his legend. They called me El Fantasma in Mexico. Left tracks across 3 states for a decade. His single good eye gleams in the dark. Voss didn't catch me. I walked into his trap to save my mate. A jagged pause. She died anyway. The jaguar watches water drip through the ceiling, counting each drop. Ghost's voice drops to a whisper. You're different. Younger. No mate to mourn. The jaguar finally meets his gaze. That means you've got something I lost. A reason to live long enough to hate them back. Dawn reveals a new horror. A young gray wolf dragged in by its hind leg, the limb twisted at a sickening angle. By midday, its whimpers have faded to shallow breaths. The jaguar watches as a worker approaches with a syringe. Ghost's tail twitches. Look away. But the jaguar doesn't. When the wolf's body goes slack, something primal awakens in him. That night, he begins testing the bars methodically. Top, sides, corners, searching for weakness. Ghost watches in silence. Then, with deliberate slowness, he stretches his good paw toward the front latch and taps a single loose bolt. Fever dreams come with the jaguar's hunger strike. Visions of sycamore-shaded canyons, the weight of a freshly killed javelina in his jaws, and a memory? A man's calloused hands wrapping his bleeding paw in cloth years ago, murmuring words that sounded like apologies. The jaguar wakes with a start to find Ghost watching him. You knew a good one, the old cat says. It isn't a question. Outside, a storm rages. Somewhere beyond these walls, the Santa Ritas stand untouched. The jaguar closes his eyes and imagines the rain washing his scent from the world. 3 days without food. For without water, the jaguar's ribs press against his dulling coat like knives sheathed in leather. Voss storms in, jabbing a cattle prod against the bars. Fine. Die stubborn. After he leaves, Ghost waits exactly 17 minutes, until the security camera's red light blinks off. Then he shoves something through the bars with his paw. A chunk of raw meat, still dripping. Stole it from the lynx's dinner, he rasps. The jaguar hesitates. Ghost's ears flatten. Eat, or next time they'll tube feed you, and you'll lose your chance. The jaguar stares at the offering. Then, with agonizing slowness, he extends his neck and takes the first bite toward survival. Jake Carter's pickup rattled down the dirt road, his dashboard littered with maps marked in red ink. 5 years. 5 years since the trail camera near Nogales captured that distinctive rosette pattern, the last wild jaguar in Arizona. Now, staring at the anonymous tip in his hands, his knuckles whitened. The grainy photo showed steel bars and a pair of amber eyes he'd recognize anywhere. The engine idled as rain began to fall, each drop hitting the windshield like an accusation. In the passenger seat, his late father's field journal lay open to a dog-eared page. Some creatures are worth losing everything for. Jake turned the key. The headlights cut through the storm, illuminating a sign he'd passed 100 times before. The documents burned Jake's palms as he crouched behind the dumpster. Moonlight revealed shipping manifests, veterinary records, and, most damning, a ledger with entries like asterisk J137. Male panther onca, 92 kilograms, $475,000, Dubai. Asterisk his breath caught at the familiar tag number from his own research. A sudden floodlight swept the alley. Pressing deeper into shadow, Jake noticed something worse. Dates spanning 15 years, and at the bottom, a fresh entry. Asterisk termination scheduled. June 15th, pelt preservation. Asterisk tomorrow's date. Somewhere in the warehouse, a jaguar screamed. Not the territorial cry of a wild cat, but the sound of a soul being erased. The stun baton hung limp at Jake's side as he faced the cage. Up close, the jaguar was skeletal, its coat dull beneath the scars. But when Jake whispered Hermano, the cat's head snapped up. That word, the same one Jake's father had used years ago when they treated an injured cub near the border. The jaguar's nostrils flared, taking in the scent of chaparral and gunpowder that still clung to Jake's clothes. Across the aisle, Ghost stiffened. He knows you, the mountain lion rasped. Jake reached for the lock, then froze at the click of a safety being disengaged behind him. Funny, drawled Voss. I was just about to have you stuffed too. Blood dripped between Jake's fingers as he placed the raw venison just inside the bars. Day 7 of this delicate dance. Each morning moving the meat an inch closer. Today, the jaguar didn't hiss. It watched with the same calculating stillness Jake had seen in wild ones before a strike. "He'll never trust you," Dr. Emma Shaw said, adjusting the bandage on Jake's forearm from yesterday's introduction. But when the jaguar finally crept forward, it wasn't for the food. It sniffed Jake's scarred hand, the one missing 2 fingers to a young cougar's bite years ago, then locked eyes with him. Recognition flashed between them, not of man and beast, but of 2 creatures who understood pain. The tranquilizer dart clattered to the floor as the jaguar recoiled, howling. Jake spun to see Voss's grinning nephew lowering the blowgun. "Just having fun, Uncle Jake," the cat thrashed, foam flecking its jaws as the drugs took hold. Jake lunged, too late. The last thing the jaguar saw before darkness was the man who smelled like the desert being wrestled to the ground by security. When it awoke hours later, the mountain lion was gone. Only a dark stain on the concrete remained. "They took Ghost to the back," whimpered the fox in the next cage. The jaguar's roar shook dust from the rafters. Somewhere in the facility, Voss smiled. Emma's penlight swept over Ghost's medical chart. Page after page of experimental drug trials, all crossed out with "no effect on regenerative capacity" scrawled in margins. Then she found it, a folded map tucked between the pages. The Sky Islands wilderness with one canyon circled in red ink. Asterisk Site 9. Last confirmed jaguar den. Asterisk her hands trembled. This wasn't just about profit. Voss was hunting something far more valuable than pelts. Outside, a truck engine roared to life. Through the window, she watched armed men load crates marked "live specimens." The jaguar's cage stood empty. Emma reached for her radio. "Jake? They're moving him tonight." The transfer cage stank of fear and sedatives. Jake pressed his forehead against the mesh, whispering apologies the jaguar couldn't understand. Then a miracle. The cat's groggy gaze focused. For 5 endless seconds, man and beast stared through the bars, years of wilderness and wire between them. Jake saw the exact moment memory triumphed over mistrust. The jaguar's chuff was barely audible over the engine noise, but it carried the weight of a promise. As the truck pulled away, Jake made one of his own. He turned to Emma, blood trickling from his split lip. "Call the team. We're getting him back." Somewhere ahead, brake lights vanished into the desert night. They found Ghost in the processing room, strapped to a stainless steel table. The old cat's breathing was shallow, but his eye burned bright when Jake entered. "Took you long enough," he rasped. Jake worked frantically at the restraints. Ghost's paw, cold and stiff, closed around his wrist. "Listen, the jaguar. He's like I was. Thinks rage is enough. A wet cough. Tell him claws can't cut steel. But patience." His body spasmed. Emma's syringe came down too late. As the EKG flatlined, Jake noticed something clutched in Ghost's other paw. A keycard smeared with blood. Outside, thunder rumbled. Somewhere out there, a younger cat was learning the same hard lesson. The storm masked their approach. Through night vision goggles, Jake watched the jaguar pace its new prison, a shipping container at a remote airstrip. Emma's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Sedatives are loaded." Jake hesitated. Then he did something insane. He stepped into the open. The jaguar's snarl died when it caught his scent. Rain sheeted between them as Jake extended his bare hand. The cat's nose was cold and wet against his palm. For 3 heartbeats, the world held its breath. Then the jaguar leaned in, resting its forehead against Jake's, just as it had done years ago when he'd removed that thorn from its paw. Emma's gasp echoed in his earpiece. "My God. He remembers." Chaos erupted as the first tranquilizer dart struck the jaguar's flank. Voss's men poured from the hangar, rifles raised. Jake threw himself over the cat as bullets sparked off the container. "Run!" he screamed. But the jaguar didn't flee. It stood over him, lips peeled back in a snarl that shook the rain itself. The second dart found its shoulder. As the drugs took hold, the cat's last act was to drag Jake to cover before collapsing. Through fading vision, it watched its human fight against the men dragging him away. Then darkness. When the jaguar next awoke, it was in a sterile white room, The pre-dawn silence shattered with the crunch of armored vehicles plowing through desert brush. Jake crouched behind a FBI SWAT team member, his heart hammering against his Kevlar vest. Through night vision goggles, he watched the Jaguar's container, now surrounded by Voss's armed guards. A voice crackled in his earpiece. Animal rescue team in position. Then all hell broke loose. Flashbangs lit up the airstrip like lightning. The Jaguar's enraged roar cut through the chaos as its container door blew open. Jake's stomach dropped. The cat was charging straight toward the gunfire. A young agent raised his rifle. Jake tackled him just as a tranquilizer dart whizzed past. "That's not the enemy!" he screamed over the gunfire. Somewhere in the smoke, Spotted Gold vanished into the scrub. The handcuffs clicked around Voss's wrists just as the sun crested the mountains. Jake watched the billionaire sneer at the FBI agents. "You'll never prove half those charges." Then Voss's eyes locked onto Jake, and he smiled. "Check your precious cat's medical records, Carter. The real ones." The blood drained from Jake's face. He sprinted to the mobile vet unit where Emma was examining the sedated Jaguar. Her hands shook as she held up an X-ray. "Jake, there's a microchip implanted near his heart, and it's transmitting." The realization hit like a bullet. Voss had turned his animals into living tracking devices. Somewhere out there, the Jaguar was leading them straight to something. Emma's radio crackled. "We've got movement. He's heading northeast, toward the old mining tunnels." The Jaguar's paws left bloody prints on the canyon rocks as it climbed. The drugs made the world swim, but the scent was unmistakable. Human, many humans, and beneath that, something else. Something that stirred memories of warm milk and safety. The canyon narrowed until the Jaguar had to squeeze between boulders. Ahead, voices echoed. A child's laughter. Then a woman's scream. "Dios mío! Yes, un Jaguar!" The cat froze at the edge of a hidden camp. Below, a dozen emaciated animals paced in makeshift cages, including 3 spotted cubs. The Jaguar's nostrils flared. These weren't just any cubs. They smelled like him. Voss hadn't just been collecting animals. He'd been breeding them. The Jaguar came to with a jolt, chains rattling against a concrete floor. This cage was different, larger, with a dirt floor and a single barred window showing distant mountains. The scent of the cubs still clung to his fur. A shadow moved in the corner. "Took you long enough," rasped a familiar voice. The Jaguar's head snapped up. There, in the dim light, sat Ghost, very much alive, his ruined shoulder now sporting angry surgical scars. The old mountain lion bared his teeth in something resembling a smile. "Welcome to Phase 2, kid." Outside, a generator roared to life, flooding the compound with electric light. The Jaguar's pupils contracted. This wasn't a holding facility. It was a laboratory. Emma adjusted the 4-drip as Jake paced the recovery room. The Southwest Wildlife Conservancy buzzed with activity. Federal agents interviewing staff, veterinarians tending to rescued animals. On the monitor, the Jaguar's heartbeat pulsed steadily. "We got lucky," Emma murmured. "That microchip could have killed him during removal." Jake stared at the cat's sleeping form. "And the cubs?" Emma's smile didn't reach her eyes. "With that sweet old cougar in enclosure 3. Seems he's appointed himself their guardian." Through the window, Jake watched the mountain lion limping alongside 3 tiny spotted shadows in the exercise yard. Something tightened in his chest. He turned back to the sedated Jaguar. When he wakes up, he needs to see the sky. Golden light spilled over the Santa Catalinas as the Jaguar's eyelids fluttered open. For one disorienting moment, he thought he was back in the wild, until the scent of antiseptic registered. Then he saw it. Not a ceiling, but an open mesh roof revealing dawn-streaked clouds. The Jaguar's muscles tensed. A shadow moved nearby. Jake sat cross-legged against the far wall, deliberately not making eye contact. Between them lay an open gate leading to a sprawling outdoor enclosure. The Jaguar's nostrils flared. Pine, rabbit, damp earth, real air, real world. He took one step, then another. When his paws finally touched grass after 18 months of concrete, the sound that tore from his throat wasn't a roar. It was something far more primal. Somewhere in the distance, 3 small voices answered. Jake found the door ajar at dawn. No signs of forced entry, just 4 sets of paw prints leading into the desert. Emma handed him the note left on Ghost's pillow. Too old for cages. Taking the kids somewhere Voss can't follow. Don't look for us. Jake's fingers traced the blood-stained keycard tucked beneath the paper. The same one Ghost had died with. The jaguar watched from his enclosure, tail flicking. For the first time since rescue, Jake saw something new in those amber eyes. Peace. The radio on Emma's hip crackled. Dr. Shaw? You might want to see this. On the monitor, a satellite image showed 4 heat signatures moving single file through a remote canyon. 1 large, 3 small. Heading deeper into the wilderness than any collar could track. The rabbit lay untouched for 3 days. The jaguar had retreated to the highest platform in his enclosure, refusing even to look at Jake. It's the cubs, Emma sighed. He knows they're gone. Jake leaned against the fence, staring at the empty cougar enclosure. We should never have let Ghost. A sudden crash interrupted him. The jaguar had knocked over his water trough, his sides heaving. When Jake approached, the cat bared his teeth. Not in aggression, but in something far worse. Betrayal. That night, Jake lay awake staring at the ceiling. At 3:17 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. One grainy photo of 3 spotted cubs sleeping beneath a rocky overhang. In the shadows, a single yellow eye gleamed. Monsoon winds howled through the sanctuary, rattling the enclosures. The jaguar paced as lightning split the sky until a familiar scent made him freeze. Wet earth, mesquite, danger. Suddenly he was back in the desert, rain pelting his back as he dragged Jake to safety. The memory hit with physical force. When the first staff member arrived at dawn, she froze. The jaguar's enclosure gate stood open. Paw prints led straight to Jake's cabin. Through the window, she saw them. The man asleep at his desk, head pillowed on paperwork, while 200 pounds of spotted predator lay curled at his feet like an overgrown house cat. Neither stirred as she quietly latched the door behind her. Emma adjusted the syringe under Jake's skeptical gaze. It's not just a tracker, she explained. This will neutralize the remaining microchip fragments and enhance his homing instinct. The jaguar watched from his perch, ears flicking at the medical jargon. Jake's voice was tight. You're talking about rewiring his brain. Emma met his gaze. I'm talking about giving him what Ghost had. The ability to find his way home from anywhere. Outside, thunder rumbled. The jaguar sniffed the air, sensing the coming storm. When Emma approached with the needle, he didn't resist. As the serum entered his bloodstream, his pupils dilated, not with fear, but with sudden, startling clarity. Somewhere beyond these walls, 3 small lives depended on him. And for the first time in a year, he knew exactly how to find them. The live rabbit trembled in the moonlit enclosure. Jake watched through night vision binoculars as the jaguar's muscles coiled beneath his spotted coat. Still too thin, but growing stronger daily. The rabbit bolted. For one heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, explosion. Dust swirled where 200 pounds of predator had been. The kill was clean, efficient, wild. Jake exhaled shakily as the jaguar dragged his prize up a cottonwood tree, just as his ancestors had done for millennia. Emma's voice crackled in his earpiece. Hunting success rate, 87%. Better than some wild populations. The jaguar's golden eyes met Jake's across the darkness, a rabbit's hind leg dangling from his jaws. Not a plea for approval, a declaration. The desert still lived in him. Blood matted the jaguar's chest fur as he limped back to his den box at dawn. The cottontail's final kick had found its mark, a deep gash along his ribs. Jake approached with the tranquilizer gun, but stopped when the cat bared crimson-stained teeth. This was a lesson only the wild could teach. That night, Emma found Jake stitching up a rabbit-shaped training dummy with extra strong kicks. You can't protect him from everything, she murmured. Jake kept sewing. Watch me. Outside, the jaguar licked his wound and watched the stars through the mesh roof. Somewhere out there, his cubs were learning the same hard lessons. His ears twitched at imagined squeals of play. Or pain. The black neoprene collar felt alien against the jaguar's throat. Jake's fingers trembled as he adjusted the fit. Solar-powered. 2-year battery. Releases automatically if. His voice cracked. Emma finished for him. If it doesn't detect movement for 48 hours. The jaguar studied his reflection in the truck's side mirror. The blinking green light looked like a firefly against his dark fur. Jake knelt eye-level with the cat for the first time since rescue. "This isn't goodbye," he whispered, pressing his forehead to the jaguar's. The cat's rumble vibrated through both their chests. Then, with a final nudge that nearly knocked Jake over, he turned and vanished into the pre-dawn shadows beyond the open gate. The GPS tracker beeped once. Then began its steady pulse toward the border. The barbed wire fence stretched endlessly in either direction. The jaguar paused, sniffing the cold metal. Beyond lay Mexico, and the scent trail growing stronger with each mile. Suddenly, headlights swept the desert. The cat flattened himself as a border patrol truck rolled past close enough to taste its exhaust. The agent's radio crackled. "Any sign of Carter's cat?" A laugh. "That old fool really thinks." The jaguar didn't wait to hear more. With one powerful leap, he cleared the fence and landed in a different world. The air smelled of ocotillo blooms and distant rain. Home. The GPS collar's signal blinked erratically as he crossed into the no-man's land between nations. Somewhere ahead, 3 tiny heartbeats quickened in recognition. Jake's cabin felt cavernous without the jaguar's presence. He stared at the computer screen where the blinking dot moved steadily south. Emma's hand on his shoulder startled him. "You knew this day would come." Jake nodded toward the framed photo on his desk. His father kneeling beside a young jaguar cub with a bandaged paw. Some bonds don't break. They just stretch. Outside, the wind chimes made of old tracking collars sang in the desert wind. The computer emitted a soft ping. The jaguar had stopped moving near a known waterhole. Jake smiled for the first time in days. Smart cat. He missed the next alert that flashed across the screen. Asterisk, secondary signal activated. 12 miles NE of primary. Asterisk something or someone was following his jaguar. The cave mouth exhaled the familiar scent of milk and warm fur. The jaguar's muscles locked at the threshold. Inside, 3 gangly adolescents tumbled over each other, twice the size he remembered but still clumsy. The largest cub noticed him first. A warning growl died in its throat as instinct overrode memory. The jaguar chuffed softly. Recognition flashed across the young male's face. Then movement behind them. A shadow detached from the cave wall. Ghost limped forward. His mangled paw held protectively over the smallest cub. The old mountain lion's single eye gleamed. "Took you long enough," he rasped. The jaguar took 1 step forward. Then another. The cubs erupted in a chorus of squeaks and headbutts. Somewhere in the distance, a satellite captured this reunion, and the second, fainter signal moving steadily closer. The javelina never saw death coming. One moment it was drinking at the water hole. The next, 200 pounds of spotted fury slammed into its shoulders. The jaguar's bite found the spinal cord with surgical precision. As his cubs watched wide-eyed from the rocks, he dragged the carcass to them with a pride no biologist could quantify. Ghost observed from the shadows. "They've been living on carrion and my leftovers," he muttered. The jaguar licked blood from his eldest cub's face, teaching the bitter lesson all predators must learn. Meat comes with a price. That night, as his offspring gorged themselves, the jaguar stood guard, ears pivoting toward the strange metallic scent creeping downwind. The same odor from the night of his capture. The green light on his collar blinked faster. Emma's coffee cup hit the floor when the image loaded. There, clear as daylight, stood the jaguar, flanked by 3 nearly grown cubs. But it was the shadow in the background that made her hands shake. A familiar silhouette with a lopsided gait. "Jake, get in here." When he saw the photo, the old biologist sank to his knees. "You stubborn old ghost," he whispered. The timestamp showed 2:17 a.m. The location, less than a mile from where Voss's microchip factory had mysteriously burned in '09. Jake's finger traced the date on the screen. Exactly 10 years later. Coincidence? The printer whirred. Emma pinned the photo beside Jake's desk. Underneath, she wrote, "Family reunion. All souls accounted for." Her scent stopped the jaguar mid-stride. Musky, wild, and unmistakably female. The cubs froze behind him as the sleek shadow materialized from the rocks. Luna, his mate from before the capture. She circled them slowly, nostrils flaring at the human stink still clinging to his fur. When she reached the cubs, her growl shook the canyon walls. Ghost stepped between them. "Easy, sister. They're his." Recognition dawned in Luna's golden eyes. She sniffed the eldest cub, then licked its forehead with a rough tongue. The jaguar watched his fractured world knit itself back together. As the new family disappeared into the twilight, only Ghost remained behind. "Go on," the old cat rasped. "I'll keep an eye on our other problem." His gaze locked onto the blinking red light hidden in the rocks above them. The monsoon rains came hard that year, washing away all traces, except what needed to be found. Jake knelt in the mud, fingers brushing the perfect paw print preserved in dried clay. Adult male. Recent. But it was the smaller set of prints circling it that made his breath catch. Cubs. Thriving. The radio at his hip crackled. "Dr. Shaw says to tell you." The secondary signal stopped moving. 20 miles northeast of your position." Jake's smile faded. He knew that area. Abandoned mining tunnels. Perfect place for poachers to hide. As he stood, something glinted in the sunlight. A single spent rifle cartridge half buried in the mud. The jaguar's GPS collar chose that moment to emit an urgent beep. The dot wasn't moving south anymore. It was coming straight toward him. Fast. The young male jaguar crouched low, mimicking his father's hunting stance perfectly. Jake's breath fogged the binoculars as he watched the lesson unfold. Same technique, same patience, even the same ear twitch he'd seen the adult cat master in captivity. The GPS collar around the yearling's neck told the real story. Property of SWSA ID #J137-2. Emma's theory had been right. The father had brought his cub to the exact spot where Jake first found him years ago. As the young cat pounced, Jake's radio crackled. Movement at the mine entrance. He lowered the binoculars. 5 miles away, the adult jaguar signal had gone stationary. Too stationary. Like he was waiting. Jake's knees protested as he shouldered the pack. 30 pounds of medical supplies, tracking gear, and, against regulations, his father's old revolver. The note he left on the kitchen table said simply, "Gone to check camera traps. Back by supper." Emma would know better. The jaguar's last transmission showed him circling the abandoned Silver King mine for 12 hours straight. Predators didn't linger without reason. As Jake's truck ate up the dusty miles, the radio played a news snippet. Former billionaire Garrett Voss released pending appeal. The steering wheel creaked in his grip. Somewhere ahead, a cat's green collar blinked like a warning light. Moonlight bathed the familiar outcrop where Jake had first fed the jaguar by hand. Now, fresh claw marks scored the sandstone. A message in a language only 2 creatures understood. Jake ran fingers over the grooves. For parallel lines. Then 3. Then 4 again. A countdown. Or a tally. The wind shifted, carrying a metallic tang that didn't belong in these mountains. Gun oil. His flashlight beam found the shell casings half buried in the dirt. 308 Winchester. Professional grade. From the darkness came a sound that froze his blood. Not a jaguar's roar, but the distinctive click of a safety being thumbed off. Emma's hands shook as she unfolded the crumpled page from Jake's desk. "If you're reading this, I found what the jaguar's been guarding." Voss wasn't breeding cats for pelts, he was training them. Military contracts. The cubs were phase 2. Ghost knew. That's why The writing ended mid-sentence. Outside, an engine roared to life. Emma grabbed the satellite phone and Jake's shotgun in one motion. The GPS screen showed both signals converging, Jake's truck and the jaguar's collar. At the mine's coordinates, another dot appeared. Unregistered. moving fast from the south. She recognized the route, the same one Voss's helicopter always took from his Tucson estate. The computer's alert shattered the midnight quiet. Emma watched in horror as the Jaguar's vital signs spiked. Heart rate 220 BPM, rapid movement, then nothing. For 3 agonizing minutes, the screen showed only static. Then, a single transmission burst through. Coordinates: 31.7342 degrees north, 110.8744 degrees west. Vitals: stable. Proximity alert: 2M. The last line made Emma's blood run cold. Secondary collar activated. Subject: Homo sapiens. ID Voss G. Somehow, in that dark mine, cat and man now shared the same location. And only one collar was still transmitting. Dawn revealed the blood trail first, leading straight to Jake's cabin. Then the paw prints pressed deep in the damp earth. Emma approached slowly, shotgun ready. The porch swing creaked. There, in the shadow of the overhang, lay the Jaguar. Muzzle streaked with crimson, flank rising and falling rapidly. Between his front paws rested Jake's battered hat. The cat lifted his head. Those golden eyes held no guilt, only grim satisfaction. From the trees behind Emma came a sound she'd know anywhere. Jake's voice, hoarse but alive. "Told you he'd bring me home." His bandaged arm pointed toward the canyon. "But we need to move. There's 3 more cats still out there, and Voss's men are hunting them." The camera trap's final image showed ghosts like few had ever seen him. Head high, scarred face turned toward the sunrise. 3 young Jaguars flanking him like a general with his troops. But it was the shadow at the frame's edge that told the real story. A human silhouette, one arm raised in salute. Jake traced the date stamp with a trembling finger, the morning after the mine explosion. He'd thought it was rubble that had rained down on them that night. Now he understood. The old mountain lion had given them one final gift. A diversion. Emma's voice broke. "The cubs?" Jake handed her the next photo. 3 healthy adults streaking across the border into Mexico's protected reserve. With their mother, right where they belong. The young female Jaguar watched curiously as the biologists set up their equipment. Unlike her wild-born parents, she showed no fear, only the same calm recognition her father had displayed years earlier. Jake held his breath as she sniffed the camera trap, then rubbed her cheek against it deliberately. "Marking it," Emma whispered, "like she's claiming the territory." The cat's collar, outfitted with a new GPS unit, blinked steadily. Not for tracking, for protection. As she vanished into the brush, Jake's radio crackled with the report they'd waited months to hear. Congress just passed the Voss Act. All private exotic ownership banned nationwide. Somewhere in the distance, a Jaguar's victory roar shook the canyon walls. Jake ran calloused fingers over the engraved paw print. Behind him, the sanctuary's newest residents, 2 orphan Jaguar cubs, tumbled in the grass. These would never know cages, never fear humans. Thanks to Ghost's sacrifice, and one remarkable cat's journey home, the world had changed. A rustling in the mesquite made Jake turn. There, just beyond the fence line, a massive spotted form watched silently. No collar, no scars, just wildness incarnate. Their eyes met. Then, with a flick of his tail, the Jaguar vanished, leaving only footprints and hope in his wake. The rocking chair still creaked on windy nights. Emma would find herself staring at it, expecting to see Jake's lopsided grin, a coffee cup steaming in his hand. The cancer had taken him fast, just like he'd wanted. "No hospitals," he'd insisted. "Let me hear the damn coyotes." They'd buried him under the cottonwood tree, where the Jaguar's paw prints still marked the dirt each rainy season. On the 1-year anniversary, Emma brought whiskey and the old GPS monitor. As sunset painted the canyon gold, the screen lit up. A single ping from a collar that hadn't transmitted in years. Coordinates: Jake's gravesite. Heart rate: steady. Distance: 10 m and closing. Emma smiled through tears. Some bonds, it seemed, even death couldn't break.